Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Bob. So, what do you think's going on? How do you feel about it?
Disappear for 1 month to become the most dangerous person in the room. First, stop scrolling. Second,
state malpractice. It is instead the middle, the liberal, well-meaning, easily upset middle that desperately needs the protection this kind of language provides, because it is the middle of the empire that must look upon this and say, yes, this is tragic, but necessary, because the alternative is barbarism. The alternative are the countless killed and maimed and orphaned and left without home, without school, without hospital, and the screaming from under the rubble, and the corpses disposed of by vultures and dogs, and days-old babies left to scream and starve, is barbarism. And I just, as a caveat,
And where did that come from?
2025, many of the show's wildest forecasts are creeping into reality. Could the world be on the brink of an AI takeover? Is a global blackout imminent? Will green energy be suppressed by corporate giants? We are just as curious as you are, and that is why in today's video, we'll explore 20 shocking Simpsons predictions that might just come true this year. But be warned, what The Simpsons predicted for April 2025 will blow your mind. 20. U.S. versus China. In a memorable episode of The Simpsons, the town of Springfield finds itself on the brink of a global war between the United States and China. The tension begins smoothly, but as the episode unfolds, chaos erupts. Homer, ever the protector of his family, rallies them to prepare for an impending attack on Springfield. Fighter jets swoop in, missiles firing as the stars and stripes wave ominously in the background. What catches viewers' attention is the emblem on the jets, which some fans believe resembles China's national symbol, adding a layer of tension as the situation escalates. While it was entertaining when it aired, what The Simpsons predicted resonates eerily with current events. As published in recent news, we now know that China's People's Liberation Army is constructing the Beijing Military City, a massive military command center said to be at least 10 times the size of the U.S. Pentagon. This facility, sprawling over 1,500 acres, is being developed with extensive bunkers to protect top Chinese leaders in the event of large-scale conflict. With growing tensions over Taiwan and China's expanding military, the worldwide...
I keep saying that all of this is being scripted. Now, the Simpsons TV show, a cartoon, first seen on J.J. Tapman's show, Matt Grunage, the producer and creator of Simpsons. No way is this going to tell the future, unless everything has already been scripted. Donnie Hump, it's he seems he can only win against really women who have really annoying voices and basically allow him winning. Meaning, Hillary Clinton, one of the most powerful Democratic politicians there is, she can get whatever she wants, right? So she has more power than a president, right? So that's why she took the job of being a foil, right? And that's what she was. Donnie had these big outside rallies, and she couldn't fill up a high school gymnasium. She kept saying things, oh, those deplorable baskets of deplorable. She just kept making sure that Donnie would win. And the girl, Madam Vice President, she came from a really long line of California pieces of work, right? And it just like I ask most people, when do things go wrong? And most people say, oh, well, when Jack got whacked, then Robert and Malcolm and Martin and Huey and the list goes on. Maryland, it just goes on and on. And who's the other women reporter who got whacked? Anyway, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob. Now, my show, I am your sensei, your griot. I tell you stories. And we are moving, this show is about 7 years old. I have about more than 2,100 shows. I'm not quite sure how many exactly, but more than that. And I would suggest you go and watch them, right? Go to my channel, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob, and go to the channel and go to my videos and, put the little cursor on there and just flick, because they all line up, right? When you hit they all line up, and it's like a roulette wheel. It just kind of boom, 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 and it'll stop one, and you hit it, and if it's interesting, stick with it. If not, do it another one and another one. And I would suggest there was a great member of the cadre. His name was Dragon. I don't know what his handle is these days. And a lot of people get upset. They call me up, they email me. I'm very responsive. But sometimes I'm not, because I'm out in the woods. I have no internet. I have to go somewhere. Right? And I came here at the undisclosed location because we were supposed to have a big snowstorm, and not seeming to be it. Right? So that's good, but it's supposed to get ridiculously cold, and we'll see how that goes. But it's supposed to kind of be heading into spring by this weekend, And we had that last week. It was like 60 during the day and sunny, and about 38 at night. That I can handle in the deep freeze. But when it's like minus 11, it doesn't work, right? And if I have 3 roads that are falling apart, and it used to take me 6 miles to get to someplace, right? And now it's 30 miles, right? And that's just the start to get to someplace. Right? Then I add on another 20 miles. Anyway, so that's why I'm here. I have my own water. I have a spring. I have a well. I have water coming off my roof of the deck to flush my toilet. I have photovoltaics for little bits of light, and I live in a holler, so food doesn't really spoil as quickly as if you left it out in the sun. Anyway, so I'm pretty much taken care of. Now, I had some medical ability, but we're going to lose whatever medical. The hospitals are going to crash. They already are, and they have been crashing since COVID. COVID killed medicine in America, and what's left is just limping along. And so anyway, I'm of an age that I've lived past my due date, right? And so I'm just here to serve God's unconditional love. Right? That's all I'm here for. I'm here to do that. And I listen to so when I can, I listen to the radio and to the internet, and this is so scripted. So there are a number of when I died in 2014, and then it took me a year to kind of recuperate. I didn't get any. They wanted to cut my legs off and take 20 feet out of my colon and give me a quadruple bypass. I didn't do anything. I lost 200 pounds, and I worked on putting my body into homeostasis, which is kind of there. But it's still my body, between the 40 years of working as an electrician, and then another 30 years basically being, my consultant business as a fellow traveler, a itinerant scholar. I basically sat on my butt for 30 years. And the last 15 of it, I worked in the corporate world, right? I was negotiating. And I did really well by that, right? And so I had quite the hedonist, materialist kind of life. And I always did. Even when I lived in abandoned buildings, I lived well. I ate I remember, I don't have my photos with me, but I had many, many, many abandoned buildings. And I would have salons in them and art shows in them and all kinds of things. And the rich loved it, right? And I would, have a grill out back, and I'd have steaks and chicken and then all kinds of fancy Italian and French food. Everything I cooked for the rich people, I got out of dumpsters. Right? So that's kind of how I lived most of my life. I mean, not that I didn't live on the high side of things, and I always had my life as an adventure, right? And in the 70s, I traveled America from 64 until 88. I traveled the world. And first part, I traveled in America. I hitchhiked. I rode the rails. I did all that kind of fun stuff. And that got me into realizing I could travel anywhere, anytime, with anybody. And all I had to do is be a nice person. Right? I lived in Sweden a number of times because I could get on board airplanes in Stockholm. And there would be a board up there saying, these are all flights for people who are, citizens who, that was their 2 weeks of vacation time. And the government would send them any place around the world, right? And so if you got there that day and you looked at the board, and it would change every 40 minutes. And if you were ready to get on an airplane, you could virtually go anywhere. So I went to places like Damascus and Istanbul and Rome and Tokyo and Vietnam and lots of other places. And when I went to Damascus, which is Syria, it was a basic gangster state. The Assad family ran it. It had no real authority except that the United States put it there, right? And not only, it was like a dance that the Russians, the Americans, and the English had by putting all these countries that had assets, like South Africa and all the states in the Mideast. Iran had, that was a state, but the CIA got rid of their democratically elected guy who's going to do a good job. They had a lot of resources. They're Persian. They had a lot of educated people, and they put the Shah in his place. And the Shah was all about making it a modern European country. And it was pretty much obvious when I was in Damascus that all these things were put in place by Westerners to be some kind of theatrical event for the world stage, you know? Like Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage and we're all just actors in it. So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to you three there. And how about some likes, you know, thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed, subscribe. It'd be nice to get this thing. You know, I watch all these guys that do, you know, their social media relevance of what's going on. And it's good to watch them. They're very passionate, but it's obvious that they are what are known as the loyal opposition. You know, the people who call Donald Trump, you know, fascist, blah, blah, blah. I mean, kids, this has been a fascist country since the founding fathers, you know. Only white, rich men could vote, own property. Their wives were slaves, basically. You know, they had no rights whatsoever. If the old man died, you know, his brother took the property and then started stooping the old lady. You know, so it's now this place has been a joke from the beginning. But the interesting thing about America is that it has potential, right? Because people don't realize the rest of the world is stuck in a class or religious structure, right? The United States is stuck as any other place, but it has this narrative that, you know, if you work hard, you can blah, blah, blah. And you can. You can get a house. Well, you used to be able to get a house, a car, a color TV set, and maybe send your kid to college, right? That's getting a little more difficult. And but still, if you're focused and you have a, you know, an idea of what you're going to do, you can still succeed, but only in a materialistic way, right? And now that we have, you know, see, Donnie, he's a game show host. That's the only thing he ever really succeeded at. And he was, you know, the show was called The Apprentice. He was the apprentice for this job and this job alone. To be that, you know, after this election, you'll never have to vote again, right? Well, that's where we're going. So if you kids like Star Trek, virtually everything, like The Simpsons, is a projection of what's going to happen, right? Because it's, you know, problem, action, solution. And, you know, what's his name? David Icke really has a lot of this down in quite interesting ways. Let's see if we can find David. Europe is outraged.
This pissed off a lot of Americans. Let me tell you why. Did you know that
Immediately after the Munich Security Conference, European diplomacy chief Kaja Kallas called an emergency meeting of EU foreign ministers.
Europe stands strongly united in supporting Ukraine and strengthening our own defense. We will soon come up with new initiatives to take this forward. Kaja Kallas, High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy on X social network.
The subject of the emergency meeting has not been publicly announced. Analysts believe that this is related to the speech at the Munich Security Conference by the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, who actually outlined the new format for restrictions between Washington and Brussels. Vance called the main threat to Europe's security not Russia or China, but the elite shift away from democratic values.
But while the Trump administration is very concerned with European security and believes that we can come to a reasonable settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense, the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America.
European experts and journalists called the speech of the US Vice President controversial, resonant, and even provocative. So what
He said that democracy in Europe is under threat, and he tried, in my opinion, to redefine the principles of democracy, but in a way that is definitely not in line with the European value consensus. So, what we saw was a demonstration by a representative of the US government, which is a right-wing populist government that is itself undermining democracy at home and trying to convey that this is happening in Europe as well.
Vance's speech was also
That boy Vance, see where he comes from, right? And he's, he had that beard on, like when he just gets a little mustache under here. So that guy is, again, he's an actor ready to take the part of the fearless leader. And Donnie's, come on, Donnie's pushing 80. He's not in the best shape, and he's like, he's not a whale. He's like a bloated flatworm, And so one little trip, one little whoops, or just a bad cold, or the next pandemic, and he's doing the same thing he did last time. The last time when he got elected in 2016 and in 2017, before him, Obama basically kind of got scared by Ebola, right? He saw what it was, and that's how come he said AID. AID was already doing, but he really doubled down on getting WHO and AID to be the alarm of anything that might threaten the world, right? And so when Donnie got in, he pulled the plug on all of that. He didn't do it as thoroughly as he's been doing it today. He's just whacked AID, and what's his name? Elon Musk. He's pulling all the wire plugs out, and he's taking the data with him. That's why he's not even working here. He doesn't get a check. He's just working at because he's a great citizen. He's really smart. We need him, but no. He's not running Doge. And but what Musk is getting is all the data. They pulled the plug on all my medical stuff, right? Pretty interesting, because I had it wired up that all the things were wrong with me. There were medical trials of things, and I signed myself up, and that way I got really, really good health care, because they were measuring everything about me, not just, see me twice a year. They were seeing me like 4 times a year, and I was getting neurology and you name it, I was getting it. And so I'm in pretty good shape. But when I went to see my bone doctor, he was quite upset because he is part of this net that I'm part of. I have a neurologist, I have a endocrinologist, I have a GP he's the weakest link of the whole thing. And their organization is falling apart, right? So they're like, and so I had a battery of, this is one of my 4 times a year, and I had it just before the week after Donnie had gotten sworn in, right? So I went through all the testings, and I got, so I went and saw the doctors, and they each said that the whole system is falling apart, meaning the data system, right? And that when they pulled the plug, the first plug they pulled and basically disconnected all of medical everything, and then they got a judge to say, oh, you can't do that. But when they plugged it back in, half the stuff was gone. Like all the DEI stuff was scrubbed out, and DEI really was a it was basically a platform where a lot of data on the public was basically being collected. And that was gone. All that data was gone, right? And the biggest people that this is going to hurt is not going to be women, not going to be gay people, not going to be blacks. The largest group of people that DEI was serving, people like me, white men who are basically disabled. I mean, I spent a good 2 years in clamps and wheelchair. I mean, in a wheelchair right now, see? Rolling around. And guys like all the guys who came, and the poor guys who are vets, they unplugged, every day between 10 and 40 vets commit suicide every day. And they set up a pretty good network where you can call in and get some help. Well, they took the plug off of that one, just like they took the plug off of all the guys who knew how to assemble nuclear weapons, right, and protect them. And they fired all those guys, and they unplugged them. See why this is, they are decapitating the government in such a way is that after 9/11, all of these governmental organizations were very, very, very tightened up their security, and similar, like up to the level of TSA everywhere, right? Can't get in on those buildings unless you got a little tag with a, some kind of code on it, your picture and all that. Well, all you have to do is get into the computer and you unplug that person from who gets through that door. And even the guy who runs the place, he walks through and the door won't open because his little dingle doesn't open the door. So that's pretty much what happened to all those guys who were supposed to keep an eye on the government. They're gone. And they're not supposed to be fired summarily, right? All these people aren't supposed to be fired summarily, right? And so, they want to